Hi, I'm Donna and this is Charlotte. We're from Pimms and Needles. Thank you for joining us. This podcast is brought to you with Point North. They're supporting our project, which is called Bloom in Life.
And it's through a fund called Enriching Later Lives. And it's all about providing information for women in midlife to help navigate really difficult situations and kind of facilitate positive change.
Well, welcome. We're really excited today to be joined by Tracy from Cruise Bereavement Support. Thank you for coming in, Tracy.
Thank you, Donna. Thanks for inviting me.
Lovely to have you, Tracy. So
Thanks,
tell us a little bit about your role at Cruise Bereavement Support and what a bereavement specialist does.
Okay, so I've got multiple roles at Cruise. So I'm a bereavement volunteer. I've been a bereavement volunteer there for 17, 18 years now. That follows a loss that I had as a child, and that just got me sort of interested in supporting bereaved people. But I'm also head of services there, so I manage just over 70 branches across England.
Wow.
Obviously, the North East is part of that, and I've done some direct work in the North East as well. But what we do is we provide bereavement support to adults, children and families. So if they've experienced a loss of a loved one, that could be a friend, could be a family member, colleague at work, mum, dad, sibling, anybody. It doesn't matter who died or when they died. We can provide support to that person or family.
So how did it? So you mentioned that you'd worked as a bereavement counsellor initially. Mm-hmm. So then, when did you take the step to work there full time?
Well, I'd been a project manager for quite a long time in telecoms, and I loved my job there, brilliant job. But I wanted to do something really meaningful. I think I just wanted to give something back to the community. I'd had a bereavement, multiple bereavements myself, and I just felt like a really deep sense of empathy. And I think when you've got that deep sense of empathy and you've been through an experience yourself, I think you just want to try and be there for others, support others, because it's hard to talk, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I think, we speak to women, we speak to men, we speak to children, we speak to lots of different types of people. And sometimes it's being available. It's being that point of contact for somebody should they wish to talk about it.
Mm. And so do you thought, like when you start talking to people, do you think, they fit into one of 5 categories of how they're handling it? Or is everyone's grief journey different?
Everyone's grief journey is very different. We say unique to that person because I think it depends who died, how they died, when they died, what that person's relationship was with that person. Because not everybody's got a positive relationship with the person who died. So that can trigger lots of different...
Strange.
It is, it's really strange. And I think we assume, we have... lots of love for the person who died, but there could be lots of anger. Somebody may have been abused by that person in an earlier life. It's not, grief isn't straightforward. So for us, we sort of take each scenario as one, really, and we let that person tell us and explore their grief. We don't assume, because you could lose your mum, Donna, Charlotte, you could lose your mum, I could lose mine, but we have 3 very, very different experiences. Some, it's sudden death, isn't it, sadly? So we're not expecting it. Others, we are expecting it, and that can trigger different feelings because you're almost preparing for the death before it's actually happened. Some people grieve, before the death has actually happened. So it just depends on the circumstances, I think.
Well, that's interesting what you said about like people not always having as much love for the person that's passed and struggling with grief, because I suppose that would bring up a whole new array of things that I've never thought about before, of things that have maybe been unsaid, like frustrations and things like that. And is that part of the process of how they make their peace? Yeah,
definitely. And for some people, they might regret the life that they didn't have with that person who died. Some people could be resentful of that person, frustrated with that person, angry with that. It depends on the circumstances. Some people just don't get to meet their parents for various different reasons either when they're a child. They might be adopted, fostered young. Again, they maybe haven't built a relationship with them, but there's still a deep sense of connection with that person who's died. So it's a very interesting job for us because, like I say, it's all very...
I was just going to... One of the questions we were going to ask is what is one of the biggest misconceptions about grief? And just when you said that about like you pointing that out, you just don't think initially. You might not be really sad because you miss that person. You might have other feelings about grief.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
we all just think about, oh gosh, you're so sad that person's not there anymore. But there's so much more going on that you don't think about initially.
Oh, there is. The relationship you have is key, really, isn't it, to how you then grieve afterwards. And sometimes, what's the saying? People say, grief is the price you pay for love. I think that's a sort of common term, isn't it? But depending on how much you loved or didn't love that person can trigger so many different reactions.
People often talk about that cycle or the 5 stages of grief. What is that?
I think there's about 55 stages of grief. I mean, I think the stages of grief, Kubler-Ross did a model, 5 stages of grief, but does everybody follow just 5 stages of grief? I think you might have the denial at the start, you might not. You know, if that death is coming and you know that it's coming, you might not be in denial of it. I think, you know, the frustrations are often quite natural. Feeling angry is quite natural. Not everybody gets depressed. You know, when somebody dies, you can feel down for short periods of time, but you're not necessarily depressed or, you know, can't leave the house. Some people have to leave the house because they don't want to be in the house where the person died. So I just think there's loneliness, numbness, there's some people feel isolated, some people don't. Some people want to be with others, some people want to be on their own. I just think there's just so many different reactions to grief, I'd say. I think the stages of grief is a guide, really, where eventually you almost do a bit of a full cycle and you think, you know, I've got through it, but there's often a lot of other bumps along the way.
I was going to say, do you see a pattern of people following those emotions? Do they tend to go in a certain pattern from your experience, or is it just different things at different times?
I think it depends, again, on the person. For some people, it is very much a process, a circular process. But for others, we use the zigzag. And I do this a lot, we zigzag. Because I think sometimes we sort of, one day we can't get out of bed, next day we can. Next day, it's another duvet day. And then the next day we want to go shopping. And we sort of, the zigzag is the loss versus restoration, because I think it can take people quite a while to sort of rebuild their life again. Some people it doesn't, but for some people it can, because you're trying to build almost like a new normal. Your world that you had before with that person in it is completely different when that person dies. So you've got to almost reshape it how you want to then live your life without that person there. But a nice little concept that we have, it's not our concept, it's a well-known concept, but it's called continuing bonds, which I really like. And when I've experienced loss, you know, some people literally want to rub the image of that person out because it's too painful to access. Whereas for me, I think, and I'm quite spiritual, go to church, but I think a lot of that is about sort of keeping that person's memory alive, keeping the connection alive. So like at Christmas, talking about having mint sauce on my Yorkshire puddings, you know, which might not be very normal to most families, but for us, that's what my nan used to do. So I think, you know, you can inject bits of that person to sort of keep that memory alive. And I think that's really special if you can do that, but not everybody wants to do that or can do that easily, because it can be quite painful.
Has it made how you treat your relationships differently, like with your role and seeing the grieving process? Do you think I just hug everybody that I see because I might not see them again? Has it made you more differently the way that you leave relationships, so you wouldn't have an argument and let someone go in case something happened? Or
it's an interesting question, because do I think about my own mortality more? Yes. I think naturally when you've got sort of 7-year-olds dying of cancer, you've got the 12-year-old in the road traffic accident, you know, you've got 17-year-old fallen from scaffold, and there's so many different examples, isn't there? It does make you think, you know, what if it was me next? What if it was them next? And I think as a result, you do treasure the relationships that you have with people. But are all of my relationships with people perfect? Probably not, because I think life isn't like that. But every now and again, you sort of, I like to treasure the little things, to be honest. Like that's my sort of learning from doing this type of work, like being outdoors, being in the sunshine, being in the fresh air, walking the dog, going for a coffee with family. Like for me, it's the little things that matter, because they're the things that you never ever get back. Your memories are your memories, and if you're lucky enough to have memories of the person who died, then you can access them, can't you, when you want to. But I just think if you can just appreciate the small things whilst you've got them, and even if you've got a bad relationship with somebody, it's still, it's a learning, isn't it?
I was going to say that is like such an interesting concept of like, even how do you help someone deal with grief when they've got a bad relationship or negative things have happened? Like how do you help them get around that? And some people, like you said, want to move on really quickly. How do you sort of validate that, or what do you do?
It again, quite individual for each. I can't advise in my role as a volunteer. I can have an inner opinion and thought about the situation, but it wouldn't be sort of professional for me to give that to one of my bereaved people. But you've got to sort of explore with them, let them lead. What do they want? So if they've had a difficult relationship with their father and their mother's recently died, do they want to build a connection with the father? Because not everybody does, and it could be detrimental if you try and it doesn't work, because that could be another loss. So I think you've just got to work with the person and find out, what do they want? What would make them happy? What would give them a bit of peace? Because what I like at the end of the grief cycle, if you like, is you sort of, I think you learn to live with the grief. I don't personally think I don't think the grief fully leaves. I think there's always a part of you that holds that person inside. But I think if you can get to the point where you're sort of at peace with what happened and at peace with the situation, then that can give you a bit of comfort.
Is that the concept that you've talked about before, like growing around grief?
Yeah, exactly. That's the Tompkins model, yeah. So growing around grief. I always draw growing around grief for children when I'm working with children, and I just think sort of as you grow up, you go through the children's phase, and then you go into the teens phase, and then you go into the adult phase. Do you ever lose the person who died? Their memory might fade a little bit. You might forget what they smelt like, or the colour of the hair, or whether they were tall or really tall. There's details that you might forget, but I think the crux, the core of that person is still inside. But I think as you develop different relationships with other people, the connection's still there, but hopefully it's not as strong as it was before. But yeah, I think we all grow around grief, Charlotte. I think it's, again, depending on how the person died, you might have different memories of them. I work a lot with, sadly, families who've been bereaved by suicide, and the memories that some people want to hold about that person can be very different to the situation, how it happened. And yeah, grief can leave devastating impacts on people, but I do believe that people can create a new life, a different life, not the same, but they can. If they work through it, they can.
Shall I pour the tea on?
Yes,
pour the tea.
Oh,
That cup of tea.
I wanted to ask Tracy, like, what do you think culturally in like the UK? How do we deal with death and grief, like in comparison to maybe other cultures across the world? Like, is it something that we are up? I mean, you're dealing with it every day. You're having conversations about it, but just for the average person, like, how do you think we deal with it?
I think for some families, grief can be so difficult that it can become a bit of a taboo. So like, the Christmas dinner, me talking about the mint sauce and the Yorkshire puddings, I think for some families it can be really difficult to bring that person to the table when they've gone. I think probably just because of the raw emotion that it can bring, and it can make people vulnerable, I think. So often I think we, not all of us, but some of us can hide behind our grief a little bit. But But it's interesting, like in other countries, they really celebrate.
Yeah, celebrate life.
Yeah, they celebrate life, don't they, for years and years and years and years. And that's another interesting concept, because I think what's interesting for us here is sort of when somebody's gone, what day do we then remember? Do we remember the day that they died? Do we remember their birthday? You know, what did, and I love to remember their birthday rather than the day that they die, because I just think that's a negative, for me, it's a negative sort of day. But actually their birthday, thinking, oh, they would have been 79 now, or they would have been 80 now, that brings a smile to my face rather than, oh, they were in hospital, in a bed, sadly the family couldn't make it. You know, it's, so again, we're all different, Charlotte, but I think some of us tend to hide behind our grief, put on the brave face as well. But I think actually to be upset, to let it out, you know, that is very normal. That is normal. That's what we want to encourage. Other cultures, they can, some people, you know, they get buried very, very, very quickly, or cremated very, very quickly. I think here often we have to wait, and sometimes the having to wait can be that's another interesting part of the grieving process.
Yeah.
It can be a long
It's going to be a
time.
few days, and then it's a couple of weeks. And I'm like, that would be an uncomfortable time for me, I think.
And then sometimes you've got sort of Christmas periods that get in the way. You've got bank holidays that get in the way. And then it's whether you feel like you want to go visit them at a chapel of rest or something like that. You know, not everybody does. Can you leave them without visiting them? So I think the longer somebody's there, there's almost a potential responsibility to do something, to be there.
I think that's it. I think there's no guidebook, is there? There's no, this is what you should do.
No.
And it's you making, when you're in that stage of grief, are you making the best decision now that in 5 years' time you're going to think, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I didn't do it any differently. And I suppose there's always that worry, isn't it? But you're just making that decision, aren't you?
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things for me now doing this work, because people will say, is it depressing doing your job? And it's a real privilege actually to know that people are willing to come forward to talk about it. So it's like, for me, it's a really nice job to have. But I think the bit that I don't think about enough myself is what happens when I die. Have people got everything they need? Do they have my wishes? Do they know what songs I'd like? Do I want to be buried? Do I want to be cremated? And I would encourage people really to think about that now, because I sometimes think I'm far too young to think about things like that. But actually, I want my children to know what to do. Some people haven't got children, so they rely on other family members. Some people haven't got other family members, so they rely on neighbours. You know, so it's, I think if we can prepare a little bit, and that's an uncomfortable conversation to have with yourself, with your partner, with your parents even.
It's something you just shy away from. You think, if I talk about it, I might just die tomorrow. You know, as if like you know, like manifesting it. But
You did tell me that you wanted a nice basket casket. We were looking at baskets at one point.
with a beautiful, I'd like colourful flowers on top of it. And then could I leave that in your hands, because I know that you would do that job efficiently. Yeah.
But some people like really struggle afterwards with the, you know, did I do what, you know, my parents, did I follow those wishes through? Did I have the wake in the right setting? Did I order the right food? And it might seem like small details, but it's, you know, when that person does go and you know that they want to celebrate their life, it's making sure you do that really, really well. So it's just having the access to the information, really. So I do think my job does make me think about preparing a little bit for...
Even practical things. I mean, I'm like the minute doing power of attorney for my uncle that died, and I think you find yourself in these really morally difficult decisions. You don't know what to do, like, because you've never had that conversation of, I'm appointing you to do this is what I want, let's talk about the things that we want in the will or whatnot, you know, or difficult things. You don't want to have them conversations, but it's just so difficult afterwards for the people that are left around you, isn't it, to try and unpick them.
Yeah, definitely. And wills are another interesting topic, I think, because we obviously have clients who come to us where there may not have been a will, but that person may have wanted something specific from their loved one. And it might be a ring or something like that, a piece of jewellery, something that was special to them. But I think without having that will as well, that can lead to sort of interesting complications, I'd say, to the grieving process, because you're not just grieving for that person, you're grieving for what that person didn't do, didn't leave, didn't say. And it's interesting, but that's the complexity. I think another complexity with grieving is, we often don't sadly experience just one person dying in our life, do we? So when one person dies, it might trigger a previous bereavement. So that can be another sort of complication with the grieving process. Often we can sort of go back, to when somebody might have died before.
And it's funny because we know you socially in your life and soul of the party. And it must be so hard for you doing a job where you're talking about death all the time and being able to leave it. Like if you're talking about things with suicide and children and just really traumatic passings, how do you go home and be happy, bubbly Tracy?
I think self-care is a huge part of our training, massive part of our training, because you're carrying such a lot of weight, other people's weight. And I'd say there's sort of 4 or 5 key sort of stories, if you like, people's situations that have never left me. I think, and you will get those, they can be quite traumatic, they can be quite descriptive. And some of them don't really leave, but we get supervision. So supervision is so important when you're working with bereaved people. And that's really so that you can not talk about their situation, but talk about how a situation like theirs might impact you personally. But for me, it's things like playing music. So I can get a bit daft. So I've got to be quite professional and serious in my day job. But I think that's why I sort of have the daft, silly side at home, because I think if I didn't and I took life too seriously, I think that could have a negative impact on my health. But
I suppose you're always having it. You're trying to bring yourself back into that energetic space, aren't you? And like you say, using music just to change the energy. Oh,
I love music. I mean, music. I like cooking. I like dancing in the kitchen whilst I'm cooking with the music on. I love getting the family involved with that. I'm not sure they do, but I think I really enjoy walking as well. And I think when you're out sort of in the fresh air, you can reflect on everything, can't you? So you can reflect on wasn't that a terrible situation for them? But then you can also sort of balance that with sort of, but how they're coming through it and how you're helping them to come through it. And then you start focusing on your own life and the nice things that you've got in your own life. And
just thinking about like practical things, obviously from your side, when you're giving the support, what could you advise people that are going through grief? Practical things about, like we talked a little bit about remembering maybe the anniversary of the death or the birthday. My friend, sadly, just this Christmas, she lost her mum on Christmas Day.
Oh dear.
And I think, how do you navigate that? What can you do Christmas Day? How can you change that perspective, or I don't know.
It's tricky, and again, it might depend on sort of how that person died, if it was expected or if it was sudden. But I think that continuing bond is quite a nice concept, I think, for Christmas Day. If you can sort of bring that person to the table. And I think that first Christmas is always the worst, isn't it? The first anniversaries, the first Mother's Day, first Christmas, first birthday, children's birthdays, I think within that first 12 months is difficult because you don't know how to respond, how to react, whether to put on the brave face, whether to be sad with others. So I think they just need to sort of give themselves a bit of a break for that first year. Sometimes changing what you do on Christmas Day can help people. So we've had clients who might go out for a meal rather than try and entertain at home, or maybe entertain in a different family member's home rather than their own. Some people have had beautiful stories where so there's a place setting at the table, there's a chair at the table, the starter comes to the place setting on the table, and you just treat that as almost like a normal Christmas. they're not physically going to eat the soup, but they're there with you. Do you know what I mean? And for some people that works, for some people that might not. After Christmas dinner, going out for a nice family walk together, sometimes changing it up ever so slightly can sometimes help people. I think what's nice about Christmas, I think you can sort of make the Christmas baubles. So each year that bauble can come out for that person. I love doing that actually with children and with adults, because even just the feather in the glass bowl can it's just the thing that makes them present. It's just the thing that makes them there. Lighting a candle's a really lovely thing to do as well. We've had family members who've written poems on special days so that they read it at the table. Everyone's in tears. But it's like, it's just a nice, that person was part of your life for a long time, hopefully. Why not try and make them part of the day? But that's not to say it won't be sad.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, it'll still be sad.
And do you find that it's mostly the people come to you within the first year of their loss, or could it be when they've just lost them, or is there a specific time when people tend to get in touch with Cruse?
We had, I can't talk about individual scenarios, but we've had, same day. So we've had, the person who's died on that day and somebody's just so shocked they've contacted our helpline because they just don't know what to do. So in that sense, we can offer some emotional support and some practical signposting. But no, I don't. I think often people wait until sort of after the funeral. So I think because there's often such a shock at the start, and sometimes it's just, if it's not a shock, it's just turmoil. It's just the reality kicks in that person's actually died. Often there's a bit of sort of paperwork and admin, isn't there, to do, sort out the cremation or the burial, registering the death. Often there's quite a lot of sort of tasks to do. So we find that people, I think, would often reach out to us after the funeral, but not necessarily straight away. Some people are supported really well at work. So if you've got sort of EAP, employee assistance programs and things like that, sometimes workplaces can offer counselling through the workplace, which is really helpful. It just depends, Donna, I think. But we have had sort of families that have come years later. But it might be that a neighbour's died, but it's triggered their dad died, that they just never addressed 5 years ago. It could be the suicide that was 10 years ago that maybe wasn't talked about as a suicide properly, that they actually are ready to face now.
And do you have a sort of certain period of time where you would think, like, this is an average period of time for people to go through that cycle and come out the other side maybe, or not come out the other side? Or do you get people that feel stuck in it for years? Or
Oh, yeah. At Cruse, we offer up to 6 sessions. We are a charity, so we do rely on funding to provide the service. So we tend to sort of work within that 6-session model, really. And that gives us time to sort of understand the person and their grief, how it's impacting them, how they're feeling. Might do a little bit of memory work if that's relevant for them. And then we'll sort of talk to them a little bit about coping mechanisms and how they might want to then rebuild a different life for themselves. Do you get over a person in 6 weeks? No. It's there to sort of give you some tools to make you think about how you can restore your life without that person being there. But again, I don't think there's a time frame on grief personally, Charlotte. I think everyone's so different. And like I say, sometimes it can bite you in the bum when you least expect it. The dog could die and then suddenly it triggers the death of a loved one. I think it can depend on your support network as well. If you've got friends around and they're there regularly to listen, then somebody might get through it a little bit quicker. But everyone's different. I don't think you can put a time frame on it. I think every grief is just so different.
And you mentioned working with volunteers. How do they tend to be retired? But is there somebody that fits in that gap as a volunteer, or do they come in all different age ranges and backgrounds? And
I came to Cruse as a student, so I was studying. So rather than talk about my bereavements as a child, I decided to study at college and then went on to university. So it took me years to open up, really. So I came in fairly young, I'd say, as a student, and Cruise provided my placement. So that's where I could do my practice hours. But we've got all age ranges, anything from over sort of 18 right up to maybe 80, 88. We've got, fairly old volunteers, but imparting such valuable knowledge and information to people.
Would you say that those volunteers have come to you because they've been through a bereavement?
Some have. Some definitely have.
Yeah.
I'd say the majority probably have experienced loss. But others, I think you just have really kind people out there sometimes who just...
a lot of empathy.
Yeah, I think if you're that type of person who naturally cares for other people, wants to be the shoulder to cry on, you like I say, you're not giving advice all the time. You might be signposting and providing some practical information, but I think if you're warm and kind, and our volunteers, honestly, they're so kind with their time. When you think, they're giving up time to work with a bereaved person, then they're getting supervision, then it's continuous training, because we've always got to sort of keep our skills alive and things as well. So I just admire any volunteer from any organisation to volunteer anywhere. I think is such a gift, really, isn't it, to do.
Your time's more important than anything else.
Absolutely. But yeah.
For anybody listening who's maybe, I don't know, at the very beginning of it's just happened, they've been bereaved, or I don't know, at the beginning of the cycle, I suppose, what would you recommend, or what tips could you give them, or where would you signpost them to?
I think if you're right at the beginning, again, depending on how that person may have died, I think just breathe. Just let yourself go through the process, because it can be overwhelming. It can be really challenging if you've got other people at home, you've got pets to look after. Just give yourself a break, breathe, let your body and mind go through the grieving process. And the grieving process isn't always about crying at a specific time. You might just need a bit of time on your own. You might need the blowout on a Friday night. Just give yourself time. I think people, when it first happens, I know when it first sort of happened to me, that not being able to eat was quite a big thing for me, not being able to stomach anything, because it just all felt so wrong in there. Your whole body's like in turmoil, isn't it? So I just, if you can manage to eat a little bit, it will help. If you can try and help yourself to sleep, so maybe sort of relax before you go to bed. And it's hard because, like I say, I can't describe it. Your whole body is a mess, isn't it? When the shock, it's like, how can you be in control when you're in shock? And I think that's the sort of dilemma for people.
And I don't think people really give themselves a break or recognise that, do they?
No.
It's like people think about crying, but I think they're probably not thinking about all the other things that your body's going through and the effect that stress, anxiety, whatever, can have on your body. It's massive, isn't it?
Like uncontrollable stress and anxiety, I'd say, as well. Because this massive change in your life has just happened. Your body's trying to react, your head's trying to react, your heart's trying to react. Practically, you've got things to do. I think just give yourself a bit of a break. And when I say that, that could be a break from work. So some people do think about everybody else and I can't let work down, but actually try not to let yourself down by going back too soon. I think that's why organisations now, they sort of have bereavement leave for people, don't they, to sort of take up to 2 weeks off. And that is really to get people to just try and focus on themselves and look after themselves. I mean, sometimes if you can, sort of engage with yoga and exercise classes and things like that. I think sometimes letting that frustration or being in that calm environment you know, forcing yourself to do that can sometimes help.
Even like a massage or something. I
Yeah.
always remember someone saying to me, like, your body just goes through so much stress in them situations, like that you're not aware of. Like, put it back, try and have the massage, put it back to somewhere near right, you know.
Yeah.
Imagine being sleep deprived as well. It'll just add to everything and sort of escalate everything and make it all feel worse.
Oh, horrific. Like, I think bodies can almost like shut down, you know, almost sort of not function as they should because this thing's just totally got in the way. And I think that period can last quite a while for people. Like I said, depending on when, because even that build up to the funeral, the who says what, do I have to say a speech? Do I have to keep it together? You know, so I think in the first few weeks, I think it's hard to tell people what to do because I think you've got to let your body go through it. What I would say is if you do feel sort of yourself, moods getting quite low, you know, sleep deprivation really kicking in, not eating as a result of that, then obviously visit a GP because that isn't good for a long period of time. But there will, you know, the GP can help. They could support with some medication. They could support with some talking therapy. I think when people are ready to engage with talking, then I'd definitely recommend talking. And if it's not to somebody like us, then to a family member or a friend or a colleague, just to sort of release some of the weight that sits on your chest, because that's what it is, isn't it? It's a real weight that you've got to almost, for me, it's like chipping away. You've got to chip away at releasing the weight.
And do you recognise it? Like things like writing letters and stuff, and putting together memory boxes, are there things like that can help? Because I think just even getting your feelings down, whether, you know, like we mentioned before about people, you might have angry feelings or things that are unsaid. Is it good to just put that down? Or
Yeah, I mean, quite often people will keep a journal or a diary. For some people, writing things down can really help. So Monday I feel like this, Tuesday I feel like that, Wednesday I feel like this. That can help some people sort of track and monitor their progress through their grieving process. For others, it's you can't even think straight to write something down in a book, you know. Memory boxes are really good for children and for adults. And it can literally be the sports trainer shoebox. It doesn't have to be, you know, something that looks glittery, but you can decorate a memory box if you want to as well. For some people, it's a carrier bag. If they haven't got the box, it's maybe just a nice bag. But that can be things like, you know, an item of jewellery, an item of clothing. Some people really like the smell of the person who died. So I'll never forget a young girl whose dad was very into the football. So she kept a sweaty football top, but for her, that was him. That was just how she remembered him. And it did have that musky sort of smell.
perfumes, you sometimes smell perfumes, and when you're walking around, you think that reminds me so much of that person.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's songs. There's certain people where I hear a song and I think of them straight away. So,
but you can write the song down on a piece of paper and pop it in the box. You can get the CD out the garage and pop it in the box. What else have we had? Bars of chocolate, which obviously over the years you wouldn't recommend opening and eating, but you know, their favourite, like Yorkie bars or something like that. We've had those in memory boxes. We've had pieces of somebody's hair. What else have people keep all sorts. Again, it's what's meaningful to you. My husband's addicted to books, and I've always said when he dies, I'll burn them because they just take over the house. But would I burn them all? I'd have to keep one. I'd have to keep a couple of history books. But that's him, isn't it? So, you know, it's just reminders of the person. And what's nice about a memory box is you can pop it under your bed, you can pop it in the attic, but on an anniversary or when you feel the need, you can just bring it out and bring it down. Ashes are another common thing to sort of go in memory boxes, in nice boxes and things.
It's such a huge topic, isn't it? Like, and a difficult one to talk about. It's been lovely talking to you about it, and I think we should probably talk about it more, and it should be out there more. I think it's nice to hear from your perspective of helping people with it, the benefits that you can get for you in a positive way. So what would you say what is the best outcome or feeling, or what is it for you that you get from helping people deal with death?
Do you know what, Charlotte? It just feels nice knowing that my life isn't all about me. Because our life, we can be very selfish at times, can't we? Our life, it can all be all consuming about us and our family. But what's really nice is just, for me personally, it just feels nice sort of being there for people that might not have the same support systems as me. They might not have that sort of normal life that I have, if you can even call it normal. But do you know what I mean? You've got some people who don't have families, they don't have friends, they might be homeless. You know, my job, I just love being there. I love not minding who these people are. I just love listening to people, I think. But I feel good. Like, I feel blessed that I sort of have the ability to listen, because not everybody's got the patience and the want and the need to listen. I don't know, I just feel content, Charlotte. I just feel content.
It's a really admirable thing to do, isn't it? And to find that positivity in something that is essentially quite a negative thing, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think sometimes you can pour your heart out to a stranger more so than you can to your friends.
Yeah.
I know there's times where I've been at the checkout and someone said, "Are you all right?" So I'm putting my bags in Sainsbury's. I'm like, actually, no, this has happened, and I feel like I'm really venting.
Yeah.
And I remember doing it, and the lady, I said, "Gosh, I'm so sorry I've said that." And she went, "You wouldn't believe how many people do exactly the same." So I think sometimes it is easier to talk to a stranger, but like Charlotte said, it's so admirable that you can do that and you've got the capacity.
Yeah.
I think I would struggle to not to take that home with me, and I think again that's a massive skill, that you can see all the positive and the good that you bring in and still manage not to take that home and enjoy your life and your home life.
Yeah. I think it's having, I think if you can inject just a little bit of hope in somebody's life that isn't very hopeful at that time, that's the objective for me. I'm not there to fix, I'm not there to completely heal, because I just don't think you're ever going to completely heal. But I think if you can just give them like just a glimmer of hope, a little bit of light at the end of that tunnel, then I've achieved my role.
Yeah,
Definitely.
And how would you support, like from sort of our point of view, or if you one of your friends or somebody has lost somebody, how could you support them, or what? Because I think sometimes there's that thing of, what do you say? Like, I know someone's just gone through a devastating loss.
Yeah.
Sorry if you lost, but it just sounds so cliche. Like, what can you do to say I'm there for you, but not push yourself on them too much?
I think saying that you're there when you're ready early on is key. It opens the door, it starts the communication. You're not being pushy, but I just think don't back off, because I think if you back off, because often our instinct is to back off and leave people alone and let them go through it. But I remember one man who said he really appreciated his neighbour bringing him a sausage casserole. Yeah. And I was like, oh. And he said, I didn't want to speak to her.
Yeah.
But I actually really appreciated her coming to my door. You know, the sausage casserole was the excuse to come to the door. But he said I wouldn't have answered the door like normally to anyone, because I just didn't want to engage, didn't want to speak to anyone. But because she kind of was just there, he couldn't not open it because he knew she was there. And that for him was just the start, really, of that open communication. And I just think don't be shy, really, with that. Maybe just don't be shy with death. And somebody will tell you if they want a bit of a break, or you know, they don't want to go for the coffee yet. And I think that's absolutely fine.
So be persistent.
Be persistent, but I mean, not in an intrusive way.
But sort of saying, do you want to come out for a walk, or I'm going for coffee?
Exactly.
Would you like to come?
Yeah. And if it's a no, I don't want to go out for coffee. Well, have you got somebody else you can go out for coffee with? Because I think sometimes we want to be the one that want to be the person that's there for that friend. but we're not always the right person. You know, it could be the dog walker, it could be the lady behind the chemist, it could be anyone. But just maybe asking, you know, is there somebody else there, you know, for you to have a coffee with? So just check in regularly. Don't give up on that person, because people's behaviour can change. Like, and not everybody's the same, but some people can withdraw from sort of social activities, and that's okay. Accept that, but try and encourage them to come back at some point.
'Cause I suppose you never know whether to mention it, do you? Like, keep saying, are you okay? How are you feeling? Or whether to just be business as usual and try and take the mind off it. I think that's something that I struggle with. I think, am I doing the right thing? And then I think sometimes you do just back off out of like, I don't want to upset them.
I think in the very beginning, when it first happens, my cousin lost her mum recently, and she said at the funeral that she really sort of struggled to respond to all of the kind text messages that she had. There were so many people messaging her to say, how are you and how are you feeling, that it became a bit stressful to almost have to respond. So I think, you know, send the message, make the call in the beginning, then respect somebody's time and then reach out. Because I think it's the bit afterwards where there's the lull, isn't there? There's funerals happened and family members have gone back home, and, you know, life starts to rebuild for people. I think it's at that point, isn't it? 4, 5, 6 weeks re-engage, and, you know, are you ready to pop out for tea and come back to the football class and things like that? Because the beginning, everybody's... You know what it's like with Facebook, don't you? Somebody's died, suddenly you've got 201 messages and you think, oh my goodness, I like them, but I can't respond individually.
Maybe even just saying to somebody like, don't feel the need to reply to this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But just let you know I'm here.
That's
you know, like giving people permission that they don't have to reply.
Yeah.
Like the man with the casserole, it's just, you know, here's the casserole,
Exactly.
I'm going. If you want to have a little chat, I'm studying right now, but actually I'm just doing that and then I'm going away again.
That's the friendly gesture. It's the invite, isn't it? For if you want to talk, if you want to bring my dish back, you know. It's, but that is, you know, that's the hook, isn't it? You know, if you pop something on a plate, they've got to bring the plate round again.
Yeah.
So that was their sort of motivation, if you like.
It's been absolutely fascinating. It's such an interesting topic, and I think we could probably talk about this all day, really, couldn't we?
Good.
It's been so nice to have you, Tracy. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Donna.
you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Cheers.